Welcome to Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck, Mike Grimm, along with Justin Guard and the head coach PJ Fleck. And hopefully, we might have football this weekend. Coach Fleck, good to see you. Before we get into what the last 2 weeks has been like, can you give us a little hint? Because certainly this has been the question of the hour is what's this week looking like, and how optimistic are you Saturday will happen in Lincoln?
Well, we got to practice on Sunday, so that was good. But everybody's, for this part, it's green light. We're going to play, from what I've been told. Now, I'm not. Things can obviously change within minutes here, right? But we've planned on playing. We planned on playing before the Wisconsin game was canceled. And the Northwestern, you plan as a coach to play, right? You do everything you can to plan on it, and then people make decisions that are outside of your control. But we've had 0 positive tests since December 3rd. And I think that's a huge part of this. We've had 2 in the last 7 days. And I think a lot of people don't understand the Big Ten green, orange, red, why games get canceled, if they get canceled. And I'm not here to get into all that because I'm not a medical professional. But we'll be missing multiple players, pretty much close to double what we were missing in Purdue with COVID-19 cases. But we're in the green. Right, so we're okay. We were close in that Purdue, but we're in the green. So we have double the players, but we're in the green because when you test positive, you're in that 21-day window, that 21-day type quarantine process to come back, process to be cleared to be back on the field. So there's a ton of players involved in that. But over the last 7 days, right, we've had 2 cases, which put us in the green. Okay, so we'll have north of 20 players out in the COVID protocol. But again, you have that green light to play because it's the percentages in that green, orange, red is it within that 7-day window. So that's why I feel like we're gonna play and feel positive about playing. Now there's gonna be a lot of. It might look a little bit different based on who's out there at times. But again, this is what it's all about. And our kids are excited, had a great practice on Sunday. I knew they're really excited to be back after 2 weeks off, not really off, but adjusting back into it. And I know they're excited to play. So we're going to do everything we can to get them prepared and head out to Lincoln.
I did want to ask about practice on Sunday because it was your first practice since before the Purdue game, as you mentioned last week. You hadn't practiced since then. So how does that go? I mean, how does it feel to be back out there? Do you do anything differently? Obviously, there's a lot of guys that are going to be out. So just how did the practice go in general?
I thought it went really well. I mean, they were so excited to be back on the practice field, and it says a lot about your team because as a head coach, you look at it saying, what are you going to get out of today's practice? Like, what do you want to see? And I wanted to see energy, positivity. I want to see togetherness. I want to see love. I want to see family. I want to see this team keep coming together despite people being out, right? And somehow COVID-19 pulling us apart or society trying to pull you apart. I want to see this team really coming together despite who's playing. And they did. We had one of our better practices of just the energy and the positivity flying around, the physicality of it. It was really good to see. So again, we're talking about now being better now, which will affect then. When's then? This weekend? A year from now? Then will happen, but you have to take care of now. And I was really proud of our coaches. I was really proud of our staff. I was really proud of our players with how they practice because that's what matters here, how you do something.
And you mentioned this in one of our pregame interviews, maybe before the Purdue game, maybe before the Iowa game, Coach, in regard to playing is better than not playing. Obviously, you guys were hoping to play the last 2 weeks, but you mentioned it in relation to just getting better as a team. Whether you win or lose, the victory might be in the sense that you got guys playing. So, okay, now you're down a few guys this week, and that's going to be tough, but it means it's a chance for other guys that might be called on next year in a year that might be more normal, that if they get this experience Saturday, that could mean the difference between winning or losing a game next year.
Oh, absolutely. I think that, you've got to have the microscope view and the telescope view all at the same time. And I think that's really hard to have that transparency with your football team. There's got to be a lot of trust involved because you can't be one of those guys who just talk about next year because what about now? What about the guys who won't be back next year? What about the guys who are going to go to the NFL, right? What about all that? They'd have now, and now matters. But now that microscope will affect that telescope view later on. And that's all about not valuing just the result. It's about valuing the process of how you get there, how you do it, the vision that we have for now and then the work that you're putting in. We'll give you a result, win or lose, as you said. After we beat Purdue, we came back in, and again, that next day, you couldn't tell whether we won or lost. I've said that since day one, right? Everybody cares on the outside, the external expectations, whether that win or loss happened, but we have the same mentality in here as we did when we were 9-0. The result gives you data to be able to work from. The external W and L, I mean, that's what everyone cares about. Well, as long as you win. Well, as long as you win doesn't necessarily fit our model of inside our program and inside our process, because that doesn't make everything right or doesn't make everything wrong. And so we had to fix all the issues even after the Purdue win. Maybe you felt a little better when you were watching the film, but maybe that's it. So again, it's making those short-term decisions that affect now, but also affect then, right? And having that microscope and telescope view at the same time, which again, transparency with your football team is absolutely critical. And we've been doing that with them. Because there's so much, Grimmy, outside their control. If this was all in our control, it'd be different. It's not in our control. And you have to be able to keep your oar in the water and keep a positive attitude and not only think about now, but also then.
So what was the process in coming back, to practicing on Sunday? You mentioned last week that you were able to do some conditioning work with small groups. They weren't allowed to be back inside the building yet. So when did you kind of get back into the building, and what were you allowed to do before even the practice in terms of walkthroughs and things like that? What's the sequence of steps to coming back?
Yeah, the sequence of steps are, a few days ago, we were allowed to just bring them back to condition in small groups. And it had to be outside, nothing inside. The building was completely shut down. No one was allowed inside the building for multiple days. But then they were allowed to come back to condition outside. That's all they were able to do. Then you're able to progress based on Joy and our medical team to go from just conditioning, then the weightlifting. Then they're allowed to go into the weight room. Again, very small groups, very, 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 very spread out. Okay, very small groups. And then you go from the conditioning in the weight room, which you're still adding to. So you still have the condition in the weight room. Then you go out to Indy. Then you're outside and actually doing some football specific drills with your coaches for 20, 25 minutes at a time. Again, just with your position group. Then you're able to add a little bit more. And then finally you get to a stage where you can actually have a full-fledged practice. So there's stages that have gone along with that. Not only that, we're not doing in-person meetings. It's every meeting we have positionally, team meeting is done virtually, is done through Zoom, is done through like this. So again, they're there for practice and then they're not around each other. These guys are doing their position meetings from home or somewhere else than just inside their position room. So spread a lot more. Our travel's very different and things like that. So again, it's finding those ways to be able to make sure that we can continue, as Grimmy said, we want to play. I think, like Grim said, it's better to play because you're getting better. You're playing a game. Despite the result, win or lose, you're getting better. And you're getting that game time experience, which not only helps you now, but helps you then. So that's kind of the series and steps of getting back onto what we did on Sunday was our first full-fledged practice back. And even that, you don't just jump right into, scrimmage. You don't do that, right? So there's a series of steps that you do to make sure your football team is mentally, physically, and emotionally ready to go.
Could you tell too, I'm thinking from a conditioning standpoint where these guys haven't maybe been able to be in the weight room per se for a few days. And you talked about it last week where, after you work so hard to gain just a little bit, it doesn't take much maybe to lose just a touch. Did you notice anything like that on Sunday? And how as this week goes and continues to progress towards Saturday, do you try to crank it up? So one, they're ready, but two, you haven't worn them down when kickoff starts at 11 o'clock on Saturday.
You know what's unique about this whole year, and again, there are zero excuses. It's just incredible challenges for everybody across the country. Is this is such a unique sport. This is a sport you train 8 months out of the year for that 4 months within the season, and every day counts. Every rep counts. Every weightlifting, curl, and squat and clean, it counts, and you need that for not only to get through the year physically. We're talking mentally, emotionally, and getting through healthy. And you got guys playing, stopping, starting back up, canceling, stopping, going, being spread out, stopping. It's unique because I talked about there's going to be 20 plus players out with just COVID, but we didn't talk about the injuries either. It's a normal year for that. And usually you're doing everything you can in that off season to limit the amount of injuries you have. And when that's a stop, start, don't have it, Some people are luckier than others. Some people just maybe haven't been bit by COVID as much, or maybe the injury bug as much. And that's just part of the challenge of 2020. That's unique for everybody. And that's what makes it unique and different. But again, that's another side of it too. But you're constantly evaluating, watching, talking with your strength staff, your medical team, your trainers of where our team is at. And that's why I love what Mike Sipniak, our head trainer, does. I love his relationship with Dan Nickel, our head strength and conditioning coach, because again, and our medical professionals and Joy and everybody working together instead of just in separate groups to make sure our student athletes are doing what they need to do to perform at a high level and do it at a safe level.
What's it like on a college football Saturday when you don't have a game and it's not bye week and you don't necessarily know when you're coming back? I've watched way more college football than I ever thought I would this year. What do you guys do? I know you had some team stuff and I'm sure you have some family stuff as well, but what's it like when everybody else is playing or a lot of people are playing? Obviously there's a lot of games that are canceled, but you guys are, when they show the graphic, there's a game that's canceled and it's one of yours. What's that like?
Well, you're working. We're working on those Saturdays that we're not playing as coaches. We're preparing for that next week of whoever our opponent is. So I'm not watching a ton, but it's not like you're also having an 18-hour day like you normally would. So you get a chance. And I'm one of those guys. I love college football. I love being a fan of it. But it's also a really unique experience to watch it and know that you're not playing, not because of a bye week, but because of what's going on in our country and watching numerous games a week being canceled with it. So I think there's been 82 Division I teams either have been affected by this, whether they've had to cancel a game or have a game moved. 82. Think about that. This isn't just about the University of Minnesota's 2 games they didn't play. There's a lot that have had more. There's some that have had less. There's some that have been exactly the same as us. But this is what a pandemic's all about. What I think is going to be unique, and I say is going because it hasn't happened yet. And, I've had a conversation with Ryan Day this week from Ohio State. And I just wanted to ask for my own learning, right? What is it like to wake up in the morning and not know that you're not being the head coach at the game? You're going to watch your team play while everybody's coaching and playing.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly taking down those notes, learning from other people who are willing to share too, because you just never know when you're going to be in that position, whether it's COVID or something else in the future. So you're constantly learning from other people. And I, appreciate Ryan sharing stuff with me. And, but we're all, that shows that we're kind of all in this together, that we're willing to share certain things of how we're all handling it. But it's unique, JG. It's not the funnest thing, I'll tell you that, knowing that you're not playing. Everybody think, they have a week. It's not like everybody picked up and went to the Bahamas.
Right,
this isn't, it's that constant unknown. Everybody likes regimen in their life. Everybody likes a schedule in their life. We want to know what are we doing tomorrow? Everybody watches the weather forecast to know what the weather is going to be tomorrow so you can prepare. This is, you can't prepare for this. And every day it's something new.
Well, I know Ryan had mentioned that before the game, he thought it would be torture to watch the game. And everybody was wondering how Nick Saban was going to handle, and even more specifically, Miss Terry, his wife, handling the coach. I think you coaches, you'll be fine. To me, I worry about the family that's not used to being with you watching your team, if that makes any sense. But he said it might be torturous. What did he say afterward that you could share?
Well, he did. First of all, he said, you trust your staff. He goes, I have one of the best staffs in America, people who have been around a very long time, people who know our way, which would be the Ohio State, the Buckeye way. And I trust them, and they know how to be able to handle it. We've talked about it. We've prepared together as one. So again, it's game day is really for the kids. We all have our own roles, right? And everybody matters, or everybody wouldn't be there. Everybody has a specific role. Now, some might have to take on other roles, but they've done that before or watched people do that for 30, 40 years. So I think it was a pretty good transition for him. Heather's asked me, what would you do? And I said, you're going to have to get me a fake headset and have me just walk in the basement up and down because I don't stop. There's no way I'm going to sit and watch our game. You can't have any communication with anybody. Right. That's at a game, on the sideline, no communication, hours before or hours after. Right. So it might just have to be a fake headset, and I'm going to have to just have my call sheet, talk to Heather, right? Pretend she's Coach Sanford, pretend she's, Coach Rossi, pretend she's Coach Wanger, and just maybe just talk to her, and go through the game how I would do it. And I don't know, but we have everything prepared if I was ever out of who would do what. We've already had that since the beginning of the year, but I think that would be very interesting. I think
I'm
that would be great
envisioning-
for a show.
Well, I'm envisioning the Red Savoy pizza commercials where you're just going house to house with people ordering their pizzas, and you've got your headset and you've got your call sheet and you're telling them to be pizza elite. That's what I'm envisioning, because you were ready for game day there. I mean, you looked like you were ready for game day in those commercials.
It looked like it, didn't it?
I'd be more interested in seeing if Heather would run between quarters when you go from one end of the living room to the other.
Might have to just
You'd
run
have to.
outside or something. Get the full, get the full, 40 yards or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's interesting because you mentioned we're creatures of habit, and this has been such a bizarre year. Anyway, even if COVID, if you had played all the games, 3 of the 7 were going to be Fridays, right? And now, one of the Saturday games is out, another Saturday game's out. So all of a sudden you're going to end up with, if my numbers are right, this will only be the second Saturday day game, which is the normal routine that you've played the whole year, because that opening Saturday was a night game with Michigan, right? And then the only other Saturday day game was Illinois. And then we got a couple Friday games mixed in, and here we are finally back to what would be a routine week this week with a Saturday game. It's 11 o'clock to kick off. 10:30 we'll take air. We'll talk more about that when we come back. We are due for a break, so let's take that now. Onward for Business, presented by Sunbelt Business Advisors. Wanting to be on your team when you buy or sell a business? Onward for Business is the one-stop shop for buying or selling your business and for payroll, insurance, bookkeeping, and more. Onward, Sunbelt Business Advisors, proud to sponsor Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck. More with the head coach when we come back. It is Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck from Learfield, IMG College. Welcome back. Segment 2 of Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck. We're glad you're with us here. And if you missed any portion of today's show, you can always catch it on demand via our Gopher podcast. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. So it's Minnesota and Nebraska this Saturday. We have a take air. I think I said at 10:30. That's not correct. I was thinking my basketball 30-minute pregame show. We do a full 2 hours for football. So it's an 11 o'clock kick and a 9 o'clock pregame show from Lincoln. And Guardsy will be hosting the pregame show, as always, from there. Let's chat a little bit about, Guardsy, ask you a little bit about what it was like on game day, not having games to coach. My question is, what was it like during the week without having practices necessarily to coach? How did you keep the team engaged while not being able to see them and not anybody really getting to see anybody? What was that 2-week stretch like?
Well, it's really hard. This is a game of interaction. This is a game of relationships. This is what we do, is this physical interaction with our players. And it kind of went right back to position meetings on Zoom. We did a lot of self-scout, went back to ourselves. What do we do? How do we do it? What have we done well? What haven't we done well? So we took a lot of time really to reflect on this season of individually as coaches and players. What have we done well? What haven't we done? And find a way to make it better. So that's what we were focusing on through Zoom, especially with our position meetings. But again, there's also this time too that, there's this human element to it too. Everybody has their own struggles and their challenges, not only football teams, right, and our players and our coaches, but their families as well. Now, everybody on our staff has kids. Everybody has certain challenges. So it was finding that balance to make sure that our coaches could be dads, could be husbands, could be fathers, and to be there for their family during this time, but also continue to work as well and continue to get better. And same thing for our student athletes, to make sure that time was spread out mentally, physically, emotionally, on everybody's priorities. I think that's critical.
How do you keep up or keep tabs on those that are out with COVID? Obviously, there's a quarantine process, but you don't want them to just be isolated, kind of out on their own little island. So when kids go out, what's the communication process like? How do you keep them connected, engaged, and obviously just making sure how they're feeling in general, dealing with the virus?
Yeah, like I said, Mike Sipniak, our trainers, do a great job of checking in with our players all the time. Our coaches do the same thing. And we do our Zooms, our meetings are through Zoom. So just because you're not in the building and participating in practice, you can still be on the Zoom because we're not having in-person live. And even when we did, you could still be on the Zoom because we filmed those from the room. So that hasn't been a big change, but checking on their mental, physical, and emotional health all the time is critical, just like all of our players, whether they have COVID or don't have COVID.
And from that standpoint, the mental part of it, we've talked about quite a bit, and oftentimes that's forgotten. But how about physically? I know a week ago you said that almost none of the players had any severe symptoms, all mild symptoms or asymptomatic. Has that continued to be the case? Have you guys been in pretty good shape from that standpoint?
Yeah, fortunately, I know there's a lot of people out there struggling with a ton of symptoms and hospitalized and even death, and people really struggling with this. Fortunately for us, with the I think the age bracket that we have, we've been very fortunate to have the majority of our cases be asymptomatic. Are there cases that have some symptoms? Yes, but they're very mild symptoms. And again, it's one of those things everybody's dealing with, but our antennas are always up, and our medical team's doing a really, really, really good job.
What was the balancing act? You mentioned going back through your own tendencies and taking a look at things as a staff with the team. Obviously, you talked about this, I think, within the last couple of weeks. You were able to turn the page a little bit once Northwestern. You knew that game wasn't going to happen to Nebraska. So how much time have you spent on the Cornhuskers in terms of preparing for that game?
Yeah, we started in the middle of last week to really kind of turn the page. As coaches, we started prior to that. Right when we knew that the Northwestern game wasn't going to happen, we shifted our focus towards Nebraska, at least from coaches' standpoint, and for game planning. So half the day was self-scout, half the day was Nebraska. But with our players, that beginning part of that was all self-scout for 3-4 days. And then we transformed into Nebraska with them. So while the players were just doing the self-scout meetings with our position coaches, the position coaches were already working on Nebraska, so that when we did transition, we could be able to educate and teach them about what we're going to be able to see when we actually get to next Saturday.
Just briefly, what do you see from Nebraska? Obviously, coming off of a win against Purdue, a hard-fought game with Iowa, and then not a so great game with Illinois over the last 3 weeks.
Well, I think it's like anybody this year, and no matter what team they are, right? It's teams that are affected by COVID very differently, and there's challenges in every single program. But they're a really good football team. With the quarterbacks, I got two really good quarterbacks who are both developing, who continue to make plays for them. I think when you watch Adrian last week, I thought he played really well, and again, he became the runner, the thrower. That it looks like he can be. He's a really good football player. They got people around him making plays. I got a really big offensive line. They're physical up front. The run game's really good. They got weapons on the outside. Wandale is, just kind of like a Rondale player. He can play tailback. He can play wide out. He's so dangerous with the football. Got to know where he is all the time. And again, the quarterbacks, the way they rotate him in there, they all do a lot of things well. Right. And so I think that's what's really hard for them to game plan. For us is as we keep going, it's a challenge of playing Nebraska is making sure you have a plan for both. Then defensively, their secondary might be the best secondary, one of the best secondaries in the Big Ten. They have a ton of experience back there, a lot of seniors, very physical group, probably the most physical group we've played in the secondary, long, strong, very experienced. And their front seven gets after it. They're very long, strong, hold the point of attack really well, get rid of blocks, shed blocks. And again, it's a tough football team. And they've had some close games, that have ended with the win, and then had some really close games that, that didn't end in a win. So it's going to be a great challenge for us, especially with the challenges we have, which aren't excuses, just an enormous challenge. Anytime you go to Lincoln.
What are the challenges with quarterbacks that do like to run, and that's just absolutely going to be a part of their plan? How do you plan for that, account for that, knowing that at any given time this guy could take off?
Yeah, that's the part that you prepare for, but you can't just prepare for just the second play. You got to do everything you can. Call it the second play because, the play that we spend 18 hours a day creating, right, doesn't work. And then you go to the second play, and that's when athletes become just athletes, right, and make it up as they go. So they have two guys at quarterback that can really do that and really make the second play the best play. And I think when that happens, you always have to account for them. You always have to be able to have your eyes on them somehow, some way, and the play's never over until that person's on the ground and the whistle blows. So I think that's where we've practiced that with echoes of the whistles and things like that in practice. But they're very talented players.
You've talked about this numerous times on the show. Guardsy's asked you about it a few times in relation to just tackling. And you guys haven't had live contact since that Purdue game. Is there a time this week that you want to have some hitting, or do you want to try to injury prevention and not? How do you approach that, knowing that tackling is going to be a key, especially with quarterbacks that can run, and as you mentioned, skill players that can move?
Yeah, there's a practice element when you have over 20 plus players with COVID out, and then you add the injuries on top of that. There's a scout team issue. because most of your scout team is probably playing now at some point, right? And so you've got to almost go good on good and service each other at times, right? It's not like we have 180 kids on this team, right? So you have to find unique ways to do that, but also stay healthy. Also get people who maybe are banged up from the last game and get them healthy so they can play. So there's this give and take to that, Grimmy, where we did some of that, but that was done on Sunday. And maybe the normal amount of it has to be cut down a little bit just so you can get enough guys to the game, if that makes sense, right? So as a head coach, you got to be able to balance. Is it just that toughness in practice and just getting them to tackle a little bit better, or is it to get that better person through to the game too, right? So you got to do both, and that's the balance that you have. And I thought our practice Sunday was a perfect balance of both, and I thought they played really hard.
How quick will you have to be to make sure your guys are ready for game speed too? I'm guessing the first couple of plays is going to feel like it's a million miles an hour for everybody, having not played in 2 weeks while Nebraska's been playing, they haven't missed a game. So how quickly do you have to, and how as a coach can you prepare them to be, all right, it might take a play or two, but you can't take a quarter before you're ready for game speed?
Yeah, first, I thought they did miss one, right? The Wisconsin game. I think that was the second game. Yeah, I think they did miss one. With Wisconsin situation going on, but you do everything you can, Grimmy. I mean, it's not like we get, all right, guys, you're going to go against the coaches today so you can get game speed. All right, here we go. It's harder because, but most of the guys have had some type of experience, and this goes back to why we've played so many kids, right? Because this is why you get to this position and this situation. And now the guys maybe played week 1 and 2, but then didn't play for a while, are going to be asked to play again. And at least they have that game speed to come back to. But again, it doesn't mean that the game, they have to work into the game speed. They just have to be ready for it right away. And that's what helps when you're going against the ones versus the ones, or the ones versus the twos and the twos versus the ones, and having that balance of that. So you do get that good on good. So you can have that game speed, but you've got to do that a little earlier in the week. And that's why we did that on Sunday.
All right, let's take another break. We'll come back. We'll continue to preview this football game, Minnesota and Nebraska, 11 o'clock to kick off on Saturday. We take air here on the network at 9. Stay with us. It's Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck from Learfield, IMG College. Welcome back to Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck, Mike Grimm, and Justin Guard with you. The Golden Gophers off the last 2 weeks, ready to go this Saturday with Nebraska. 11 o'clock is the kickoff. And, Coach, a couple of good news things we want to ask you about here. First of all,
good.
Yeah, how about this? Your running back, Mohamed Ibrahim, has been named one of 10 finalists nationally for the Doak Walker Award. The only Big Ten running back, and obviously he's put up big numbers, and a tip of the cap to Mohamed Ibrahim.
Well-deserved. This is one of the most special running backs in the entire country, one of the best people you'll ever meet in your entire life. And listen, guys, he's at 800 and some yards, and we played in 5 games, right? Just imagine the pace of a normal season of what he was going to do here, right? And we're so excited that he's somewhat young, right? And we're going to have him back for another year or two. He's earned everything he's gotten. That's the best thing I can say about him is he's earned everything he's got. Nothing has ever been handed to him. And he's one of the best workers I've ever seen, one of the hardest workers I've ever seen, one of the better leaders I've ever been around, and one of the most humble human beings. So it's nothing by coincidence that he is where he is. He makes our team better, and he leads that offense along with Tanner Morgan and Chris Ottman Bell and other guys. So well-deserved.
We talked after the Purdue game about how you had to hold him out late because you're worried about him maybe being a little bit banged up physically. Do you feel like he's ready to go here for the final couple of games?
Yeah, I do. I thought he practiced really well on Sunday, and he's got such a positive attitude about it. But again, those are decisions that are made by the training staff of whether he came out of the game or didn't come out of the game, and but he's a tough young man. That guy can take a lot, and he's not that big, but I think anybody in the country would love to have Mohamed Ibrahim on their team. I know that. And, we're just thankful he's ours.
So I'm going to ask kind of a bizarre question here. So take it in the spirit of which I mean it. Because
not the first time. The first time.
It won't be the last. And it can come across in a weird way. And I don't want to make it sound like you're disappointed in being in Minnesota. But you mentioned Ibrahim, you mentioned Morgan, you mentioned Ottman Bell. Thinking of Asazia Tomewall. Who else am I missing? Guys that you had committed at Western Michigan. So my question is, do you ever just in a free moment think, God, if I had all those guys and I was still in Kalamazoo, how good would we be with these Big Ten all studs playing in the MAC?
No, I don't. Listen, I don't think like that. I never have. I don't think about what could have been, what should have been, what would have been. I've never lived my life that way. I think it's unhealthy that way because it's comparing something, and comparisons steal your joy. Fastest way to be miserable is think about what could have been. I had an opportunity to be exactly what it was at that particular moment. I enjoyed every minute that I had in Kalamazoo, Michigan. My wife's from there. It was where Kathy Beauregard hired me out of nowhere and took a chance on me at 32 years old. And I owe her my entire coaching career life as a head coach. And I'm forever grateful for that town and that city and our friends and the people there and the administration and Jeff Stone and Kathy Beauregard. And they were part of the process as well as, allowing us to bring in amazing young people like those that you just named. But we're going to do everything we can. And then you make a transition and come to Minnesota and then you're working for another school and ask those guys if we thought they were good enough to play in the Big Ten. We wanted to recruit players across the board that we felt were good enough to play in the Big Ten. That's how we felt we could have cultural sustainability at Western Michigan over a long period of time. The formula is the same way, just plugged into Minnesota now, where we want players who can play anywhere in the country to play here at the University of Minnesota. And when you're in the Power Five and you have the Ohio States and the Michigans and the Penn States and the, and Wisconsins who have a head start on you and all these things that you're recruiting to be able to get to the upper echelon and sustain that over a long period of time. And so we're plugging that same formula in here. And if you look at our recruiting success, it's been, I think, really high. And it's only going to continue to get better. And that doesn't mean, though, I think everybody's perception is, hey, it's year 4. We should have 25 seniors on offense, 25 seniors on defense. That's not how it works. You only get 25 scholarships. You got to split those evenly. And when we had 4 linemen when we got here, you're usually supposed to have 18 on scholarship, right? So that takes a few years just to get to a certain number. Same with the defensive side. When we got here, we were able to sit there and say, okay, well, who can we build around? And you look at, okay, we can build on Antoine, but Antoine didn't play the first few years. Then you could build on Carter. We switched Carter's position and made him a defensive lineman from a linebacker. You can build around a Kamal Martin, but Kamal Martin came from playing a quarterback to kind of being, almost like a comparison like Cody Lindenberg. Like he can do it, but he's just not there yet, right? And then, so you can do all of that. And then Tyler Johnson, who developed into one of the best receivers in the Big Ten. But you looked at like what you could build it around, and then you got to support it with everyone else. And you had to do it quick. But you had to be able to fill holes, plug holes, and then still be able to focus on now, but also the future. And I think if everybody was able to come to practice and you could get around our young players, these freshmen and these redshirt freshmen right now, which again are from 2 to 3 years ago recruiting, right, that everybody saw, right? We've only been here now 4 years. So you're going to see, wow, look at Jalen Glaze, and wow, look at Michael Dixon, and hey, who's that guy? Look at Ariante Ursary. I mean, man, you guys have done that before when you came last year. So when you come this year, you got them plus these new guys, and then we're going to add a bunch mid-year and then have another class. And that's how you continue to get going to when you can get that junior, senior turnover, but that's not for a while. When you're getting that equal turnover, that's when you know you have it. And when you look at the teams that are having the success in the league, they have that. Okay, so again, success, however you want to measure it. We feel like we're having success. And this started out, but you asked me a question about Western Michigan and recruiting, but everything affects everything. So 1, no, I don't think about that. But 2, I'm forever grateful for the opportunity that we all got at Western Michigan. And 3, I'm grateful for the players that wanted to come here that thought they were Big Ten players and truly believe that. And then grateful for the players who continue to come here to take this program to the next level and continue to sustain success over a long period of time. So, and believe in the culture like that. And so I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're not in Ghana.
Well, on that group, the Tanner story is legendary, obviously, about how he came to Minnesota the day after his grad party. When I talked to Assezi this year for the first time, I asked him, because he was one of those, and he said, well, I wasn't committed to Western Michigan. I was committed to Coach Fleck, which I thought was a great answer. Chris Ottman Bell, when asked about it earlier this year, his first reaction was his loss. See ya. I'm going to be a Bronco. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. What do you remember about him having to come along as well and basically re-recruiting him to Minnesota? Because now he's your elder statesman at the wide receiver position and has had a really good career.
Yeah, first of all, those are really, really difficult, hard conversations. Nobody wants to have those. When I chose to came here, I knew there'd be some really tough conversations I was going to have, and that's part of being a leader. There's very difficult moments that you have that you're going to hurt some people, and that's the hardest part. There's probably still some people in Kalamazoo that don't like me very much, and I understand that. But Jim Tressel gave me great advice a long time ago. He said, don't ever think you're the only one that can do that job. There's always an expiration date on every single coach, and doesn't mean somebody can't do it better than you. And it was the greatest advice. I mean, Coach Lester there now is a former player at Western Michigan doing a really good job. And again, you're not the only one that can ever do something. They won a championship prior to me. They're probably going to win championships after us. And again, that's you just want to make it better. You want to leave someplace better than when you found it. And that was our entire goal for Western Michigan. And then when we came to Minnesota, our whole goal was to find a day one day. You know, whether everyone gets rid of me one day, whether we're here, 40 years, that you leave it better than when you found it. And that's no disrespect to when you found it. You just want to find a way to make it better. And I think that's every coach's goal. So it's same with players. When a coach takes a job like that, when we came to Minnesota, even the guys that when days later you're asking them if they'd like to come to Minnesota, they're still hurt by you. And they weren't just like, all right, I'm in. They had to think about it. Tanner did. And Tanner's like, yep, I'm coming. But not everybody was that way. And I remember Chris Ottman Bell, to his credit, which is exactly who he is. Why'd you leave? Why did you tell me this here and now you're telling me this here? There was some confusion about that. And then you walk them through and you're transparent and honest. And everybody wants honesty until you're honest, right? And then but that's also but listen, man, if you want to stay, please stay. You're perfect for that. You're going to be great. You're going to be an all MAC player. But if you'd like to come here, I also believe you can play here, or I wouldn't have recruited you. And so, people take that in stride. And, I have a heart. I'm a human being, just like anybody else. I know people don't think that as coaches. They just think, you're numb to every emotion because you're just a coach. But I love my players as my own sons. I love our recruits as our own sons. I love our staff as brothers of mine. And you're a family, and it's hard. There's nothing easy about that. And everybody thinks everything's exciting. You took a job and you left, and that was very difficult. And there's a lot of relationships now that you have that even people that stayed. And again, you're not going to take players off of that team and to bring them here, right? And that type of thing. You're not allowed to do all that stuff, right? And so there's a lot of emotion involved in it. I mean, we could talk for hours about it because it just Kalamazoo still means so much to me, and Western Michigan does. And their athletic director, Kathy Beauregard, is like a mother figure to me, and really one of my mentors for the way she thinks. And I'm forever grateful for that place. But for Chris Ottman Bell, it was a longer process, and it wasn't convincing him to be here. It was like, just take time to think about it, and you decide. I'm not going to convince you one way or another because I'm not going to convince you because I don't even know anything about it yet.
Yeah.
I've never been there before,
right,
Chris. So I can't give you all that, but I can give you me. You know what I'm like. You know what our staff's like. You know what our culture is. So you can decide that on your own. And guys, listen. And if this is for everybody, this is for if anybody thinks that's easy, everybody just thinks it's so easy because coaches get made all this money and that makes it all better. For anybody who's made some money in their life, money doesn't fix everything. It doesn't just make everything easy, right? It's take that away, you're talking about human feelings, and that's hard at times.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and Guards, you mentioned Chris Ottman Bell's now your elder statesman. You and I talked about after Guardsby bailed on the show last week. You and I talked about Rashad Bateman and his decision to pursue the training and what he wanted to do to get ready for the NFL draft. And we talked about that. Now the question is in relation to your team right now. So you got Ottman Bell stepping up. You've got a big hole. How does that production try to get filled in? What do you think of the wide receiver spot heading into Saturday?
Yeah, next man up. That's what redshirt freshmen like Michael Brown-Stevens are for, and Daniel Jackson are for, right? And that's for Chris Ottman-Bell to be able to take those young guys under his wings and lead them. A guy like Clay Geary, and this is when, like I said before, if people were able to come to our practice like a normal year, even in COVID, and look at the talent that's on this football team, and look at what's coming and what's being built. I think people have a very different perception, if it is some type of like what's going on perception. And I love when people say, "Hey, coach, let me ask you a question. Take the pandemic out. I'm like, you can't take the pandemic out. Whatever you're going to say after that has to be completely ignored. You can't ask that question by starting that way. Like, pandemic aside, you can't say that, right? So, I think hopefully that's the way you can understand that question.
Yeah, next man up, basically, right?
Next man up. Get them up. Get going. And again, internal expectation is the only thing that matters.
All right, we'll take our final break. We'll have a few moments when we come back. Stay with us. It's Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck from Learfield, IMG College. Welcome back. Our remaining moments with head coach PJ Fleck. Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck, sponsored by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota, the #1 health plan for Medicare in the state. JG?
I have one final question, Coach. I follow your wife, Heather, on all of her social media platforms. Some great row the boat gear that's coming up. I think you know what's coming now.
I sure do.
Major, it appears, holiday bake-off that happened at the Fleck household over the weekend. You come home, she's been watching baking shows all day, according to her, and it's bake-off time. Give me the results. Give me the data from the holiday bake-off.
Yeah, first of all, okay, this is what happens when you turn 40, I guess, right? You come home, you have a long day at the office, you get home, and your wife's got the whole island, right, kitchen island, full of baking things. Now, I've never baked one thing in my life. I grill, I can smoke ribs on the grill, like, let's go, right? I'm the grill master of the family. But I've never baked one thing in my entire life. And her favorite show is Sugar Rush. And her favorite show is Nailed It with my kids. Like, our kids love Nailed It, right? I've been asking her SID, Paul Rovnak, to get me on Nailed It forever, which he has not come through with yet. So I say yet because it's been 4 years. So, and that's all I want to do. My kids don't think coaching's cool, but if I went on Nailed It, they'd think that was cool, right? So anyway, long story short, get home. She gives me these 2 round pans, right? And says, hey, we're going to have a bake-off. This is going to be so much fun. We got Christmas music going on. I'm like, yes. I'm like, she goes, you had a long day. This is going to really help. So perfect. All of a sudden, she goes to the oven, pulls out 4, of her cakes already done. Pulls them out. I said, what are those? She goes, well, those are my cakes. I said, where's my, like, I just got home. She goes, well, yeah, there's your 2. I said, you have 4, I have 2. So if you're judging on height, she had 4. She only gave me 2 to start with. And then second, I mean, she's just so artistic as it is, and she's brilliant, and she's way more brilliant than I could ever be. And then, she's been on Pinterest watching shows all day to get ideas. I don't even know what I'm going to make, but I have to make something obviously round. And the only thing I know is round that it'd be a 2-man snowman if it was just 2, and I had to have some depth, so I made a snowman. And she won by a long shot. And not only that, she finished an hour and 10 minutes prior to me. And she's taking pictures of it, sending it to all her friends, how great it is. Yeah. And I'm still working on it, asking her questions. And then, I forget some things here and there, but I thought it tasted really good. We had our players vote on it, and it was 101-28. I lost. We had all of our recruits vote on it, and I lost. But some of them were nice enough to say, Coach, whichever one's yours, I'll take yours. You're the one offering me a scholarship. I was like, I like it.
Smart players.
But so that's how that went. But I heard the cake was really good. Texture was good. I was a little heavy on the frosting and the what's that called in the middle?
I have no idea. The filling.
Filling, but what's it called?
I'm the grill master too. Buttercream. There you go.
The buttercream. But if you look at the pictures, I mean, you could see one's better, but it's the better of the best, I think, if I would judge that. And for me as a coach, if I'm really good at that, we got a problem. Yeah. Because I'm obviously spending more time baking than I am coaching. But it was actually really fun. I recommend anybody to do it. And that's what I love about my wife. That's what I love about Heather Fleck. When you get home, I mean, you just never know. Like, that's what she planned at 8:30.
Well, next week, maybe you can see if you can have a film breakdown of what you do against a 3-4 defense with a blitz A-gap or something and see how she does there.
She would actually probably surprise you
Probably
how
would.
much football she knows.
Very good. Hey, it's been fun. We'll talk to you Saturday.
You got it. Row the boat, Sky Mile. Go Gophers. Thanks, guys.
All right, for the head coach, PJ Fleck, and Justin Guard, I'm Mike Grimm. This has been Gopher Football Weekly with PJ Fleck from Learfield, IMG College.